All right, here we go. Last one of the season. Coming down 3-2. Welcome to 32 Thoughts, the podcast presented by the GMC Sierra AT4X Summer Edition. Final episode before we officially ascend into off-season mode. Elliot, Kyle, Dom, back with you one final time this year. Elliot, I'm a little surprised that the beard hasn't started to come in yet. Maybe you've got one or two more appearances before letting that really grow out. Dom's getting his short game dialed in, so the summer mode is already well underway. I know you like at the end of July 1st to have a cigar to celebrate the year. How was it? What were you thinking about after working the opening of free agency?
Well, Steph was disgusted that I had it while I was on a walk with her and Max.
I saw that.
And as I smoked it, I was enjoying it, but I was still thinking to myself, I can't fully shut her down because Ehlers hadn't signed yet. So that's been done. And so off-season mode is on. And I wanted to start the podcast by thanking all of our listeners, all the great audience that we have. You know, the real reason that I think we're so passionate to turn this out as much as we do, particularly during the playoffs, is because the audience has said they want it. And if nobody really cared about what we did, we probably wouldn't do it as often as we do, but we are driven to do it as much as we do because the audience has grown to expect it. And I like that. You have made it very clear, you the listeners, that you expect a lot of Kyle, Dom, and I. And I know I don't always hit the standard, but we do try. And I appreciate each and every one of you that drives us to turn this thing out. So I hope all of you have great summers, and we'll probably see you around late August sometime. Kyle, one bit of news. Oh, we should say also, like, if there's a reason to do an emergency pod, I'll take the temperature of young Bukauskas and young Sramati and see if they are interested in doing it. One bit of news we should touch on. From what I understand, the players right now are voting on accepting the CBA. I think their vote is going around this weekend, and I'm not expecting any hiccups. I've heard the agents are not thrilled because the players were given the highlights of the deal, and the Board of Governors were given the highlights of the deal, but the agents were not given the highlights of the deal. And I think that has stuck in their collective craw, but I don't believe that it's going to prevent this from getting done. They're a little unhappy with the fact they were never sent the memorandum of understanding. So we'll see where it all goes, but I expect it to be ratified.
All right, well, you touched on how demanding our audience can be. So, as our final send-off here before we go into the off-season, we will end the same way we started this year, a tour through all 32 teams. So whether you're a fan of any of the teams across the NHL or specific players, hopefully we will get to what interests you the most at some point over the course of the next couple of hours. So what was the line you said to me last pod? Get comfortable, get a drink, get a snack. Do all of that here, whether you're maybe a coffee en route in your morning commute or just hanging out on the patio or in the back deck. Settle in as we take the tour across all 32. You ready, Elliot?
You know what I'm getting hooked on now?
What's that?
Beetroot juice. It's good for your blood pressure.
Oh, nice. Yeah. You like to run hot sometimes, so that's good for you.
I have to tell you, I never had high blood pressure until about a decade ago, and it was about the time you got hired.
That's right. The timelines do match. Never had till about a decade ago. Well, that's now a considerable amount of time that you've had to deal with it. So I'm glad you finally found the beetroot juice.
That's right. I was
Not a moment too soon.
Beetroot juice. Yes, that helps.
All right. So let's begin. Why don't we start? We'll go division by division. We'll begin in the Metro because that has us starting in Carolina because they landed what at the time was kind of the top remaining free agent out there available the other day in Nick Ehlers. 6 years, $8.5 million per. This is a team who, for a lot of years, Elliot, there was the perception with ownership, they weren't entirely crazy about spending big, or everyone had a price tag that they were not willing to go beyond. But, they signed Keandre Miller, Logan Stankoven gets an 8-year deal, and now Nick Ehlers, the free agent. Where are you at with the job that the Hurricanes have done over the last couple of weeks, and Ehlers choosing Carolina in free agency?
The Hurricanes made it very clear that they had a lot of cap room, as everybody knew, and they were going to use it. They were going to be a threat. Mitch Marner obviously didn't end up there, but going into free agency, if they got to a point where they could offer him a contract, there were a lot of people who believed the biggest number was going to come out of Raleigh. Now, that obviously never occurred, so they pivoted, they switched. And Carolina did a lot of things that are now coming to the surface to show that they were willing to be aggressive. The reason Evan Bouchard's extension got done in Edmonton so quickly was because they threatened the Oilers with an offer sheet. And we'll find out someday what the truth is there. I think a lot of people kind of believe that Bouchard was going to come in around 4 times 9.5. But if you look at his arbitration case, he could have gotten 10. And I think the fact that the Hurricanes were lurking around there got that deal to 4 times 10.5. So after they didn't get Bouchard, they pivoted to Miller. And the Rangers knew it. The Rangers were aware of it. And they got that deal done pretty similar to what an offer sheet would have looked like. Like, Carolina didn't have their 3rd round draft pick that they needed next year, and I believe Utah's got it, and I believe there was a point where they engaged with Utah about trading back for that 3rd round pick in case they needed it. But the Rangers saw what was coming, and the two sides worked out a deal. I think the interesting thing about it is, if you look at the video that the Hurricanes released, they talked about the way Miller closes out. It's the way we like to close out, the way we defend. Miller's a great skater. The Hurricanes put a huge emphasis on that, the way they play. So that's a fit. But I thought it was interesting that they mentioned the way Miller closes out, because they say he fits the way that they want to defend in terms of the actual man-to-man, check-on-check way of going. And I thought that was interesting, because those kinds of things, they don't end up in these videos, I don't believe, by accident. There's always a purpose to this kind of stuff. So that stuck with me. The Hurricanes are willing to take a bet. The Rangers weren't. The Rangers weren't willing to go long-term with Miller. They were only willing to go, I think, a couple of years. Obviously, Carolina was not afraid of that. We'll see how that works long-term. Who made the right bet, the Hurricanes or the Rangers? And I'm not surprised they traded Morrow. They've got a lot of D. And, if you looked at Morrow last year in the playoffs, he was, he's young. He's a talented guy. He's going to be a really good player. He wasn't ready for what they do right now. So I'm not surprised. They have a lot of defensemen back there. I'm not surprised that they made that deal. Nikishin, they have a good-looking defense. I really like their top 6D. Burns is one of my favorite players. I'm always sorry to see him leave somewhere. But you look at Carolina's